You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Knezik.
Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I'm Tom Knezik. Today we are back with episode 57. And Fran, I'm feeling a little down today.
Really?
Yeah, I'm going to try and keep it upbeat, but sometimes you feel a little discouraged, and today's one of those days.
Really? Why so?
Yeah, well...
Can you share?
Yeah, yeah. So I've been listening to, I listen to a lot of podcasts anyway, but I've been doing a lot of work and I like to listen to things while I work. I go through my whole slate of podcasts. I don't know what to listen to. So I started borrowing audiobooks on Libby.
Okay.
And the first one I listened to was all the ones I wanted to listen to that weren't available or had like a huge wait. So I listened to one on podcasting, which that actually made me happy because it was like how to start a podcast and we were doing everything already.
Awesome.
So that was really encouraging. But then I listened to Silent Spring by Rachel Carson.
All right.
And I'd always heard the book, and I knew who Rachel Carson was, but for some reason, just because I don't know, these things get lumped together in my brain, I always thought Rachel Carson and Jane Goodall were the same person.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It just, I don't know, they both had like somewhat simple names.
Yeah.
So I always mix them up, and then I was like, that's kind of weird that the gorilla lady wouldn't write a book about pesticides. And then I was like, oh no, these are completely different. I did the same thing. This is a little side story. I did the same thing with the Weezer song Buddy Holly, and they were talking about Mary Tyler Moore, and growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, I always thought they were talking about Mandy Moore. And I was like, why are they talking about Buddy Holly and Mandy Moore? They weren't even alive at the same time. What's going on? And then it's like, oh yeah, they're talking about someone else.
Do you know who Mary Tyler Moore is?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I do now.
All right.
I know through the song, but
all right. All right.
But anyway,
when you watch the video, did you get that it was Happy Days for the Buddy Holly?
Well, I've never seen
the
music video, but
all right. And for my generation, it's groundbreaking because they put they're playing a concert in Arnold's in the show Happy Days, and it looks like they're really part of the show, but if you don't know, if you've never watched
I've never watched the videos.
Yeah.
I've seen Happy Days, but I've never seen the music video.
All right.
But yeah, anyway, I listened to this book and I'm like, man, she is talking about all the same things that we're talking about. And I know this book's pretty old. And then I looked up and saw it was published in 1962.
Wow.
And I'm like, we're still talking about all these pesticides. We're still talking about all these issues, the lack of habitat that she was talking about in a book that was fairly successful for the time. In 1962, we're still having the same discussions. I just thought we'd be a lot further now, and that's why I feel a little discouraged.
Almost 60 years later.
Yeah.
And it still goes back and forth. I had just read yesterday that President Biden had started to take steps to put back in place some of the water protection acts that had been repealed during the Trump term. So it's just, it even depends on who's in office, like what steps we take, what the weight is, and I don't want to make it a political thing. I'm not making a political statement. It's just, we like seeing protection, which isn't going to be easier for businesses, but it has its advantages both ways. There's parties that get advantages regardless what side of the fence you're on.
Everyone has priorities, and obviously we think that the environment is should be a number one priority to just about everyone because it affects your everyday life in such a quiet way, and it's not evident how important it is until you lost that. And I was just surprised that after 60 years we haven't really made, I'm sure we've made a lot of progress, but it didn't feel that way listening to this
I'm
book.
Sure in a lot of cases we made a lot of places we've made progress, and a lot of places we've taken a step backwards. Just thinking about, I've thought about it 3 or 4 times after we had Darren Williams on when he was talking about the spotted owl, and it's, hey, do we let this small logging community perish, or do we save the spotted owl? Like, do we take away their jobs, or do we do this? And it's easy for me to come to a conclusion from the other side of the country, but I'm sure if I were living there, I'd feel a lot differently. So it's, there's always different stakes.
It happens all the time, all over the country, every day. Like even just in Colorado, we referenced before, there was a vote on should they reintroduce wolves, and you have the people who weren't going to be living around the wolves tended to say, oh yeah, we should. Yeah. The people where they were going to reintroduce the wolves said, no, we don't want the wolves. We have cows and we have all this stuff we're trying to keep alive, and now you're going to release stuff that's going to cut into our livelihood. So it's and even in New Jersey, we have a debate on black bears. So, and there's debates like this all the time, it's affecting one person one way. And sometimes it's a 50-50 split, and both people or both sides are very passionate on which way to go.
And it's even, and I feel we're bringing this up because it's going to be on the podcast that airs after this one, because we did record one already.
I was going to try and keep that illusion that we did these linearly alive.
Well, this is, we do. I'd say 95% of the time we do. Other than around a holiday, they're pretty linear. This is a one exception where to get everyone together, we had to cheat a little bit. But the mentioning about honeybees and pollinating blueberry, just hey, maybe this works, but what if I do it and it doesn't work and I take a hit for the year? That's my livelihood. It's like even those debates I get, and it's easy for me to comment on all these things. They affect me indirectly. They don't directly. It's not my business that would take a hit. It's not my family that I have to worry about. I'm worrying about everyone's family in a broad sense over time, but it's really easy for me to sit here and comment.
It's the conundrum where who should suffer and who shouldn't. And that's life. That's the decision you make. But if anyone does want to get really depressed, then wants to listen, oh man,
me.
We haven't gotten quite as far as we wanted to. I would recommend it. Listening to or reading, if you have the time to read, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, because it does give a lot of background information about how some of these decisions were made, and even goes in depth about even when they were confronted with the science on some of these, like DDT is the main topic they talk about a lot. When they were confronted with the science, hey, DDT really doesn't work. It kills the mosquitoes, but it kills everything, and it's affecting other things too that you don't want to affect, like eagles and those kind of things. And now the mosquitoes are back anyway, and now you don't have all these other things that are going to eat the mosquitoes and keep them in check. They're talking about Japanese beetle, which is Japanese beetle is a huge turf problem. Oriental beetle is a huge nursery problem, with the grubs in the pots. Well, apparently that was like almost under control in like the 40s and 50s, or early, in like the 30s, using a native thing, or not a native, but organic compound called milky spore. And then they said, oh, well, we can use these other chemicals and it'll get rid of it better, and actually made it worse over time because you were taking this invasive pest, and now you eradicated, but what was left built up a resistance. I guess you didn't eradicate it. You got rid of most of it, but what was left built up a resistance, and now it's just a pervasive problem.
In trying to kill them, we managed to help kill off their predators, and we created more habitat for them over time. So it's just, we keep progressively making things easy for them by trying to use that magic bullet theory, where we have one thing that will take care of it, but you ban one pesticide and then you have another one that takes its place. It ends up getting banned 5 years down the road when we learn about what.
I don't want to have, we've already spent more time than I was thinking on this, but it was just interesting, even putting it in today's context. Now we're working so hard to ban some things. We've talked about neonicotinoids on the podcast before, and man, I believe a lot of the alternatives to neonics are actually worse than the neonics are. It's neonics aren't good, but to just say, oh, we aren't going to use these anymore, and then, well, the alternatives tend to be other chemicals, and some of those chemicals when you actually start reading the labels and looking into the science behind them and how they work, it's like, oh crap, this is scary. I don't know if I want to use this, but this is what everyone says to use. So because we can't use A anymore, we got to use B, because not doing anything isn't an option, and there really aren't any other options other than those two right now. So it gets tricky. So
wow, what a way to start out.
So I am going to keep it upbeat though, and we have a big slate today, but I'm putting us on a timer.
All right,
I don't know if we'll hit an hour. I'll let us go a little over, but we're not going an hour and a half.
Okay,
that can't happen.
We're at 10 minutes right now. So
but we have our normal stuff with our plants that we like this week with That's Hot. We have some articles to share and this or that.
We do have a topic.
We have a topic. We're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about?
Like,
the plants that are blooming right now.
What things are hot right now? Like we always do That's Hot, but it's going to be a more in-depth
we can't limit it to just 2 plants, because we're complaining all winter saying, hey, there's nothing to choose from. Well, now we have such an abundance. We can't just choose 2.
No, we're going to take advantage of what we have and deal into that.
But talk about That's Hot. Let's talk about the plants we're vibing with this week and go into That's Hot.
That's hot.
Would you like to go first?
No, I want you to go first.
All right. So my plant for this week is, or this buzz, I should say, is Coreopsis lanceolata, which is lance leaf tick seed.
Which I love this plant.
I do too. Cool plant. And you know what? It's not that I'm lazy, but it's very convenient that we have a bed in front of our office. And that's right by the door, so you walk by it every day and see it. And
a lot of your selections are from that.
They are.
Flower bed.
It's very convenient. It's very, and not that I'm lazy.
It's a good reminder.
It is a good reminder when you see it every day, and I realize it's been blooming for quite some time now, and making an impression. It really stood out for me. The fact that it was still in full glory right now, and it probably has been for 2 weeks.
Oh yeah,
easily. So, it's a facultative upland species. Flat solitary yellow flower. It is drought tolerant. It gets 1 to 2 foot tall. Another one that's a lot of basal foliage with flower stalks out of it. Pollinators love them, especially bees and butterflies. It does make a good cut flower. So if you're looking for early cut flowers, I know it's, later in the summer you have a better selection, but early on, that's a nice one to add in. It has been said, I did see on a couple different places that it can tolerate deer. Like deer don't,
which I've heard that too.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if it's deer don't like it as much, or it's just very susceptible to deer browse, because they're probably eating the flower, not the basal foliage. So, and Coreopsis is Greek for bug-like, which is referring more to the seed, because the seed is small, like a tick. So that's my plant. It's a very striking plant if you're not familiar with it, and it very much grows like when you picked it was penstemon. You had the last one, right, where it can grow in like
really thin soils.
So it's a great selection for that. So
very cool, and I love it because it's one of those first blooming things, and we grow it in our seed fields, and when you see it in mass and it's just this giant yellow block, it's pretty cool.
And a lot of the yellows that we grow are much taller yellows. You're in that like 3 to 5 foot range. This is nice and short, so you can layer it in the front of a garden, and it does a really good job.
So my choice this week is actually a repeat choice, and I went a little like, what's the word I'm looking for? Different than normally, because it is something that's blooming now, but it's not something people are thinking of at this time of year.
All right.
And it's Winterberry Holly.
Oh, interesting choice.
And Winterberry Holly is blooming right now. So, and why I picked it is because it's a dioecious plant.
Okay.
And everyone thinks about Winterberry Holly in the winter because you have those the stems and they're covered in red berries. Well, now's the time of year you get to see, is it a male plant or is it a female plant? Because only the female plants are going to develop those red berries. So if you have a Winterberry Holly and you aren't sure if it's a male or female, now's the time you go out to that plant and you look at the flowers, and they're both going to have very, very similar flowers. They're going to have white, like probably a quarter of the size of your pinky nail.
Yeah, maybe.
I guess if you have like huge fingers like I do, it's about maybe it's like half to a quarter of the size of your pinky nail. They're really, really tiny, but they cover the branch. But even from a distance, you won't notice them. You have to get pretty close. And then if you get close to the flower, you're gonna look at it, and then the female flowers, or the male flowers, are gonna have 4 like yellow stamen coming out. The female flowers are gonna have like a green ovary as well.
Awesome.
So, and that's how you'll know which one's male and which one's female. And which, if you want those red berries, is important because you need both.
Yeah. I do have a very interesting fact for you if you interested.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So with Winterberry holly, as for most, I don't want to say all, most hollies, you don't need another Winterberry holly to pollinate it. Any ilex will pollinate it. So
really?
As long as they're flowering at the same time. So if you have Ilex glabra flowering at the same time as Ilex verticillata, it'll pollinate it. You'll get the berries. So and that even works for non-natives too. So like I understand the need for having male and female in a restoration, because you're not going to have a pool. But in a community, if you have someone in your development that has blue hollies, China hollies, they'll pollinate Winterberry holly and Ilex glabra.
Yeah.
So if you're worried about, hey, I only want to get 1 or 2, but how do I find out if there's a male or a female? And I know they make because there are varieties that are later flowering. So there's like a late male and an early male for some of these varieties, but straight species, as long as there's hollies in the vicinity.
Yeah. Yeah, which I didn't know.
Yeah, they'll get pollinated.
And so,
because it's very similar flowers. It just has to be flowering at that same.
And that brings up like another point I was going to mention was it's through the retail side of things for me. I get a lot of requests when we sell a lot of Winterberry holly, and I get a lot of requests and say, oh, I want 2 females. But since we're growing from seed, I don't know.
We don't know
what's what.
We don't know
until they flower, and then that's when you can tell. And a lot of times, like when they're seedlings or tubelings, when they're smaller, they're not flowering yet anyway. So you don't know until later. So to anyone who's ever asked me, is this one a male or a female? And I tell you I don't know. It's because I really don't know.
And I found this out. One of the former nurseries that I worked for introduced blue holly and China holly. So and blue holly is a mixture of English holly, and I can't remember the other holly that it's crossed with. But back at that point, I had a lot of non-natives in my yard, and I had Dragon Lady holly, and I just had one, and it buried. Yeah. And there were no other blue hollies in my development, but there were other hollies, and they weren't even close, but the pollinators did their job, and I was getting berries. So, and in doing research and talking with the hybridizers, they knew, hey, it doesn't matter. As long as those hollies are blooming at the same time, for most hollies, they can cross-pollinate. And
they are insect pollinated, which was, Fran and I were just saying before the show, it was very difficult to find because there are so many cultivars of Winterberry holly and a lot of times when you're choosing cultivars, only certain ones will pollinate other hollies. So you need a specific male to pollinate specific females.
And most of the cultivars are there's some height, like Red Sprite is a smaller one, or it's the size of the berry or the redness of the berry. Like some are more red, some are more orange. It's
So that's just some other things you need to pay attention to. But if you do have straight species hollies in your backyard and you don't know what they are, now's the time. Go out there, as long as you're in the mid-Atlantic. Go out there, take a look, and see if you can find any little bees and wasps and those kind of things flying around too, because that's doing some of the pollination on those plants. So
fantastic. That two great choices, and we're going to go into more a little bit later on, but we're going to keep it rolling.
Oh yeah. So let's go into this week's botany-based current events, and as always, it's a competition.
It is a competition.
So let's get into this or that.
You can get with this, or you can get with that.
All right, so we do have a winner, obviously, because there has to be a winner, and the winner of this week's, or I guess last buzz contest is Tom. Yep. You know it's not me when there's not more flair. So we do have a winner. The winner is. But no, Tom won 12-6. Congratulations. So.
Thank you very much. And that was I chose a couple. I had some very bad losses earlier where it was very lopsided, and so I kind of chose something I thought would excite the people. So
awesome.
And now back to normal. Now I'm doing things I like again.
Yeah, I saw one that really interested me. I thought others might find it interesting too, but you get to pick since you won.
I'm gonna have you go first again.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So my article is from Science Daily. And it's called Salt Marshes Trap. Wow, that's almost like a tongue twister. I couldn't get myself to say that. Salt marshes trap microplastics in their sediments, creating record of human plastic use. It was done, originally published in the Marine Biological Laboratory, originally written by Emily Greenhall.
I think that's close
Greenhall.
enough. Yeah.
Okay. So again, instead of me trying to paraphrase badly the article, I've highlighted a couple key paragraphs that I'm going to read quickly. So salt marshes are the link between land and open ocean ecosystems, and in a way between urban environments and the wild ocean. Microplastics, which are plastic particles smaller than 5 millimeters, tend to float on the water surface, but salt marshes fill and empty with the tides, so particles that would normally float get trapped with branches and roots and settle into the marsh soil. Sediments accumulate in the salt marsh layer after layer, like tree rings, keeping a historical record of sedimentation within the ecosystem. By accumulating sediments, they are keeping a record of time, says Javier Lorey. I'm going to guess, even with my glasses, I'm having trouble.
That sounds right.
MBL research scientist and co-first author on the paper. By taking core samples of the marsh sediment at 6 different estuaries in the Waquoit Bay system on Cape Cod, as well as New Bedford, Massachusetts harbor, the researchers were able to trace the abundance of microplastics dating back decades in areas with very contrasted degrees of land use. So they were able to get, one site was a pristine salt marsh, all the way to heavily impacted. And the findings were, which was a surprise in the data, that the microplastic concentration in the sediments wasn't linear as urbanization grew. Up to 50% development, the concentration of microplastic fragments were relatively unchanged. But it was once the land was occupied at 50% or larger, that's when the number of microplastics grew exponentially. So I just thought that they were able to take core samples in marshes to trap that. That's something I would have never even had contemplated, microplastics getting trapped in marsh sediment.
Yeah,
being
so
able to.
It's interesting. So a lot of these wetland areas, especially like bogs and swamps and anything, especially ones that have like a peat base, which I think salt marshes have some peat buildup as well. Just
It depends on that.
Basically, there's abiotic conditions, so things process differently and then degrade differently, or decompose differently, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And so you can really tell just through history, different events, almost like how tree rings can tell you, oh, this year had more rain and less rain, and those kind of things. You can tell by the tree rings different things through history. You can do it with core samples through these wetland systems, and a lot of times, just because they are accumulating organic material, where a lot of systems are losing organic material over time.
And unless you're completely filling in a marsh and building over it, it's not. It's being impacted in ways by what we do around it, but not directly. You're not like building stores and getting foot traffic for the most part, through these marshes.
Yeah, and even I know up in New England, they're talking salt marshes in particular are a tidally controlled system. So you have tides coming in and coming out. You have erosion that's going to happen. But in New England specifically, I know Rhode Island even more specifically, they have some of these salt marshes that are accumulating and even keeping up with sea level rise. Wow. So yeah, there's a lot of organic material accumulation happening, and then because of the wet conditions, you're not having typical respiration. I guess. So and like I said, you have abiotic conditions, so it is a pretty good marker of how things are happening over time.
But I thought it was interesting that marker was kind of like 50%, like 50% land use, it really doesn't change. Once you get over that, then it's like, oh, there was a huge change from 50 to 60, even bigger change from 60 to 70. Just, and some of these places are pretty built up around, I'd be interested to see impact based on after a huge environmental change, like a hurricane or something like that. Like I would have loved to have known the before and after of like a Hurricane Sandy here in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast, but that to me, that's just the start of some of these studies. I can't wait to see what comes past that. But just the microplastic, now they can say, whoa, it's really always existed, but it wasn't that bad here. But really in the last couple decades, that's when it's exponentially produced, and that's all in the water. So so I just thought that was, because we're in the salt marsh business, I found that interesting to me.
pretty cool article.
And that's me. What do you
So,
got this week?
Mine, and I almost didn't choose this one because I had this. I saw Benjamin Vogt put it on his Facebook page, I think, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a good one to use." This it got me really excited, and then someone posted in our Facebook group, like, I don't know if I'll use it now.
Oh, is it Dr. The one Dr. Evil?
Yeah, Dr. Evil. Dr. Evil posted it, and in our Facebook group, and I'm like, do I really want to use it anymore? And I didn't get a chance to like fully read it yet. I just read the headline. I'm like, oh, this is gonna interest me. But if you haven't seen it in the Facebook group, it's called 8 Generations of Native Seed Cultivation Reduces Plant Fitness Relative to the Wild I can't say that word, progenitor population. So I think I'm saying that right.
You know what? I'm having a huge problem talking today.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know what it is.
But and I'll read a couple sections of the abstract and I'll get into my thoughts about it. But basically it started out and said native seed for restoration is in high demand, but widespread habitat degradation will likely prevent enough seed from being sustainably harvested from wild populations to meet this need. While propagation of native species has emerged in recent decades to address this resource gap, few studies have tested whether the processes of sampling from wild populations followed by generations of farm cultivation reduce plant fitness tolerance to stress over time. And some of their methods were basically to test this. We grew the 8th generation of farm propagated Clarkia puchella, which is Persh, alongside seeds from 2 of the 3 original wild source populations that established native farm seed. At the outset, farm seeds were 4.1% heavier and had 4% greater germination compared to wild collected seed. At maturity, farm plants were 22% taller and had 20% larger stigmatic surfaces, even after accumulating for differences in initial seed size. Importantly, the mortality of farm plants was extremely high at 75%, especially in the low water treatment, which rose to 80%. Moreover, farm plants under the high water treatment had 90% lower relative fitness than wild plants due to the 1.3 times greater weekly mortality and a 3-fold reduction in flowering likelihood. And basically, they said it all came down to unconscious selection.
Yeah,
you're selecting which plants when you harvest the seed and all these different things. Which so there's a lot of good stuff that's coming out in this article, and I hate to rag on a little bit, but I guess the first thing is I hate the title.
Yeah,
because they really only looked at one species.
Yes,
and the title makes it sound like a lot broader.
Yeah,
research happened.
Yeah,
it's 8 generations of cultivation of that one species, not native seed cultivation. So that I think was a little bit misleading and probably made me look at this a little bit more negatively as I started to get into it. But they do bring up a lot of really good points. So unconscious selection is something that happens with native seed collection, regardless, because when we go out to collect seed from wild sites, we go one day, maybe 2.
Yeah,
and it's whatever's there that day is what you're going to get. So
and you try to get a large community and different communities. You
even if you're collecting from a couple different communities, you're still not getting something that's equivalent to the region or even the genetics diversity of the region, or even definitely not the whole native range of that species. Which that part is actually probably a good thing because you're only selecting the local genetics. And we've talked about that a little bit before, how that differs from region to region depending on species as well. But then so you're really only getting at what's available that day. So there's things that were probably producing seed that has already fallen to the ground earlier. There's stuff that isn't quite ripe yet that you haven't gotten. So
or that birds have beat. Maybe there was a community of songbirds that came by that
so you're only getting a segment of the genetics just when you go and collect the wild seed. Now you're taking them back to, in our case, the nursery, and you're germinating them. Well, there's some things that just aren't going to germinate in the conditions we have. So now you even narrowed that even more. So if you had 100% and now you're down to 25%, I'm just making up numbers, but so you've really narrowed it down. Oh, now you're doing that. You're doing you're planting, you're doing maintenance. There's things that are that's probably a little bit more random with the planting and maintenance, because you're going through and you're cultivating or doing some kind of things to help clean up. You're hoeing and you nick one off. Well, it's minimizing genetic diversity, but it's not so much only selecting a portion. It's by accident.
To me, it's another conundrum because ecologically everyone loves what native plant nurseries do, but in order to grow the plants or supply the seed, you know, we do it two ways here at the nursery. So we wild collect for plants that we're going to produce in production to have saleable plants.
Yeah.
If we're supplying seed mixes, that's more farm seed. So, and that's because if you were to go out to supply the amount of seed that, and we're small, you know, that some of these larger ones do, if you were to go out and go to the same place every year and collect all the seed from this one site every year, you're going to degrade these natural sites. And you're hurting the ecosystem this way. So you have to have farm crops, but you are getting maybe a different, because you're
isolating some, but here's where I change it up, because even you're isolating that genetics even more, because then when we harvest out of our fields, you're getting stuff at a certain height. It's going back to timing, and it's what's ripe then. There's shattering that happens in a lot of the grasses, where the head will actually or the stem will break off. So now the seed is actually lower to the ground, and maybe you're eliminating all the shattering species. But and then you go through the cleaning process, that's doing stuff by weight and size, and so now you're really refining even more.
But I'm looking at, like, if you have a different genetics for the farming crop, but you're also creating, I'm just looking at it broadly as a whole, the farm would be an ecosystem, but you're creating these little microsystems of monocultures of one type. You may have an acre of just one plant, which changes how pollinators would move around. It might change a lot of it. It might even change how that seed grows because of that. Like, we know, like, if there's a honeybee hive nearby, you're going to have less seed production or less viable seed. So it's just kind of, it's unnatural, even in the nursery setting. It's you know, you're creating natural plants in an unnatural setting. So you're going to have those variations. You have to. There's no way around having. I'm not surprised that farm crops, you know, there's maybe a degradation, because it's not a natural environment.
Now, I guess where I had some issues with some of the research was, obviously the narrowing that genetic pool is a concern. But a lot of the seed producers I know, and maybe I'm just friends with a lot of the good seed producers, and this is including ourselves. Well, we're doing some hand collection earlier in the season to capture some of that early genetics. And then we'll go through later and do some more mechanical harvesting. You're collecting at multiple heights. You're reintroducing wild seed into that farm site over periods of time to keep it, like, reintroduce some of that mother generation of species. So good seed producers are taking this into account, not because of science, because it just makes sense. And they say, oh, well, we need to do this already. I'm sure there's seed producers that are just looking at the bottom line and saying, okay, it's cheaper if I don't do any of that stuff. But people who are getting this business tend to get into it because they're ecologically conscious already. And they can kind of put two and two together and say, oh, this is how it works.
I don't think anybody ever decided to go in the nursery business because they were going to make a killing.
No. But and then I guess I didn't understand why they chose the 8th generation, because from our nursery crop, you're looking at the first generation removed from the wild is what's going out the door. Maybe the second. And I guess, but then even what's going into our seed fields, it's only, like, we're taking first or second generation plants removed from the wild, planting them in a field, and then we're just harvesting directly off of them. So we're getting 3rd generation removed seed. I don't know if we have anything that's going to be, I guess you have crosses in there that have, but now you're harvesting from 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. You're not just getting just the 8th generation, you're getting multiple generations of seed. Because a lot of that seed, when we go and collect, even mechanically, which you think would be very efficient, it is, but you're not getting all the seed that's out there. You have the stuff that's earlier, you have the stuff that's later. There's things that they bring up a lot of valid concerns, but I don't know how they got that 8th generation thing.
Because I'm sure it's going to vary even per plant, because if you're farming Rudbeckia hirta, so black-eyed Susan, which is basically a reseeding annual, but the plants that you plant 5 years from now aren't going to be the plants that you're collecting from. You might be 5 generations, 6 generations out. But some plants, that's not the case. You know, it's a perennial. It's come back, you're collecting the same plants, and you're getting a diversity of generations.
That's a good point, because the species they did study was an annual.
Okay.
So you have an annual. Okay, now you're getting generation after generation after generation. But at least on the East Coast, there's not a lot of native seed production of annual species.
No,
There's
not
actually
that I
very
know
little.
of. Not
So,
that I know of.
because and that's one of the big complaints in from the seed consumers is, hey, we want more native annuals, and
Yeah.
it's not profitable to grow native annuals. I
No.
guess where you have a lot of land and more mechanization out west, they probably do a lot more of it. But
Yeah.
so it was an interesting article, and I'm going to share my opinion on our Facebook site when I find time at some point this week. But because I do want to put it out there as well, so I can have some conversations about it. But yeah, I think it's interesting research, but and they were doing everything in a greenhouse.
To me, it's more too narrow of a research.
Yeah,
it really is.
You can't have that kind of title when you're only focused on one species.
Yes.
So
I agree.
No, but I'm glad people are doing it, because it means that we don't have to do it.
No,
we don't have the time to do this kind of research, even though we want to know this kind of stuff. Like I said, we're accounting for a lot of these things because it just makes sense that would happen, and we're doing it on a hunch in a way.
You have to start somewhere.
But now that the research is happening, hopefully that can give us more refined ways to do a better job of making sure the genetic diversity is good for replanting and restoration sites.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Awesome.
All right.
So of course it's always a competition, and there can be only one. So we'll post it, I guess.
It'll be Friday. I've slacked a couple times, but I think the last one I got up on time. Maybe it was the one before. I've been trying to get them up pretty quick, by like 2 o'clock.
The quicker they're up, the more votes we get.
Exactly.
Definitely. So and that will end that. So make sure you vote, because
And of course, the choice is yours.
I haven't played that for a while. I thought we played the intro and I never played the outro. So I just wanted to work that in. So
moving on, we had some really good listener interactions this week.
We did. And if I could actually find the intro, I would play it. Here we go.
Listener, shout out.
Would you like to?
Yeah, I can go first this time, since I've made you go first.
I don't mind going first.
Couple. But mine is to Ross. I think he says his name Pilling, but it could be Piling. He listens. So
yeah.
But I just met him over the weekend. He called me and asked if he could come by to pick up some plants, and I just happened to not be doing anything at that moment, so I was able to pick up the phone. I talked to him a little bit, and we got him squared away. And he stopped by, and he was just saying how much he liked the podcast. And
awesome.
Like, it's a little ego boost. It makes me feel better. I wish I got that after reading Silent Spring instead of before, but it works either way. So, but no, he was really excited to get some native plants and enjoyed what we were doing. So, like I said, it's every time we get that, it just makes us feel like we're connecting in the right ways. So and it's nice to meet people. That's the best part.
And I just had actually I'm not going to say the name because I may save it for a later shout out, but I just had one of our customers call, and we had a conversation. We were going over and a longtime customer, and he was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm a longtime listener of the podcast. I love it." And I was like, "Man, thank you so much for." I would have never have known, but I appreciate that he threw it out there so that I knew.
Yep.
Exactly. Because I was like, "Oh wow." This, because it's someone I highly respect in the work that they do. And I was like, oh, I appreciate that you're listening to us and you're still listening to us.
Yeah, exactly.
But my pick, I wanted to pick Deborah Rosenthal. Deborah is one of those people that has been active from the beginning, and we mention her on most episodes of the Buzz. There's a few people that get mentioned a lot on the Buzz. So Deborah's husband, RJ, contributes the theme music to the Buzz and to Rooted Discussions. And Deborah is very active. We're actually, she's getting us involved in doing a talk for Wild Ones in the middle Tennessee. And she does a lot of great work on her own property, and she's one of those people that is asking me questions now that I can't answer, because she's answering questions that I can't answer. So I love seeing someone that has taken an interest and seen their interest grow, and is an important member of the group. Plus, I get to have great music conversations with her too. So it's gone beyond just plant material. We joke around and have other chats as well, which I really appreciate. So I love that it's gotten to that point. So that's my choice.
So like always, just if you're not in the Facebook group, join the Facebook group and just start having these conversations. A lot of the reasons we want to put this stuff out there is to create conversations. And maybe you don't always agree with what Fran or I have to say, but
that's okay.
We're fine if you tell us, as long as you do it politely.
Yes.
We need to be friendly, and we want to be friends at the end of it. We can disagree, and Fran and I disagree on stuff all the time. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, this is the decision we're making, or this is, and then we're going off and we're still having fun on other things. So
there has to be a respect about it. Exactly. And I see that in our group, and there's a lot of people, and again, I don't want to mention names because they'll probably get shout outs on later ones, but just the amount of posts about edibles and foraging and teas and things like that is really progressing. And I love that people are throwing things out there and other people are trying it and they're going back and forth and they're experimenting and they're becoming friends, which is all you can ask for. And this is between older members, newer members. You know, I appreciate that very much. So it's and if you can put up with us all the time, that's you know, speaking of talk, so I do want to throw this out, and I know it's early because we don't know the date yet, but you and I will be guest lecturers at Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve, and I know a lot of the staff there listens to us, so hello and thank you for listening. And I know it will be in October, and it it will be via Zoom. So if anyone wants to sign up,
doesn't hear from us enough.
If you're not already tired of listening to us. So I know that the talk will be about native plants, how they pertain to you and your community, but also about the thing that we talk about all the time, growing that circle. A lot of the times,
getting more people involved.
When we talk to people, it's the choir. You know, they know it's going to be about native plants. That's who it's interesting, but we need to start preparing ourselves to all spread that word.
Like I said, that in the beginning of the podcast, Silent Spring made me really. Mostly that it was published in 1962, and I thought we'd be a lot further along. But in this process,
but 6 years later, we're still having
6 years later, we're talking about the same stuff, and that the only way we're gonna get past that is just by getting more people involved, making it easy to get people involved, and putting native plants in a way that's going to be interesting to them. Not everyone's into birds and bees and butterflies and even eating native plants, but there is things that they're going to relate to them that they'll be interested.
You have to find the common ground. You know, obviously when you meet someone, you're even subconsciously trying to find common ground so that you can have a conversation with this person. So when it comes to the ecosystem, there's got to be some sort of common ground that you can connect upon in a polite way that can get people just to at least start thinking about it. So once we know the date for the talk, we'll put it out there. If our listeners want to register, we'd love to see a great turnout and see some faces that we kind of know in the crowd. So,
all right.
Awesome.
Now we have some questions.
We do.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
If we're keeping it to an hour, we only got 15 minutes left.
I think we
still have
will
questions.
come close.
I don't know. All right, so we do have a new caller this week. I love new callers, and it's not really a question; it's a comment, which I appreciate as well. And we're going to play that right now.
Hi, this is Sean from Northern New Jersey. When I'm not slaying Japanese knotweed, I'm often planting in bald and burlap and in cocoa pots. And in reference to episode number 55, the cocoa fiber pots really work. They reduce transition shock, and they degrade within about a year or so. I don't know if they work for your nursery, but they certainly work for me as a home gardener. Love your podcast. Take care, guys.
Sean, thank you so much for calling.
Yeah.
I love that. I wish we would get more of those. I love that. But so one thing, I think we've discussed it before. If you don't know what bald and burlap means, so plants are either grown in a container or they're grown in the ground. And when they're harvested out of the ground, they're wrapped in burlap. So it's called bald and burlap or B&B. So that's something that's been dug out of the ground as opposed to specifically grown in a container. One thing to keep in mind for harvesting plants, a lot of our native plants, like harvesting happens from the ground when the plants are dormant. So after they drop their leaf, not saying they can't be dug at other times of the year, but you have to be, there's a whole process behind it and there's more risk. But a lot of our native plants are fall dig hazards. So they don't like to be dug in the fall. So you really only get one season. All of our native oaks to the northeast, with the exception of pin oak, do not want to be dug in the fall. Black gum do not like to be dug in the fall. There's, and for different reasons, trees that tend to be a little more twiggy or have a taproot or hold their leaves late are different reasons why they don't like to be harvested in the fall. But so there are some tricky things, and it takes longer for that tree to establish. The bigger the plant, the smaller the plant, the quicker the establishment. So, or the easier the transplant. So it was just nice to get some feedback on the cocoa pots, because I have none. I have no experience
with the cocoa pots. I think they're great for home gardeners, and particularly because you have an end date when you're gonna put them in the ground. That was more of our complaint from the nursery side is if we were to plant something in cocoa pots, well,
you don't know,
we might sell it in a month, we might sell it in 6 months, it might not sell at all. And that's when it doesn't sell at all, or it sells after years. That's when you run into some issues, and you don't have those issues with the plastic. So that's one of the reasons why plastic has the advantage over the cocoa pots. But I think if you don't need to use plastic, or new plastic, I should say, at home. If you can use cocoa pots, you can use peat pots. You can even just take like old soda bottles or milk cartons or those kind of things and use that as your pots. Just cut off the tops and use that as a pot. It's the same thing. Drill some holes in the bottom for drainage, and then it's even cooler, because then when they're clear, you can see the roots growing in the bottom.
I would love to just try some of the cocoa pots just to see. I would imagine that they're being held together by glue. That's my guess. I would love to see if the roots grow through and you get air pruning, or if the roots stop at the pot, or over time as the pots start to degrade, if you get that interaction between roots and pots. But just like to know how long that pot is viable in a nursery setting. In a homeowner setting, it's a completely different story.
Oh yeah. But it was interesting, because right after we had that the nursery pot discussion on the last Buzz, our rep from the company that sells Elapots actually stopped by.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We were talking about Elapots, like it was the next day. It was funny that it was just a random encounter. He was on vacation in New Hampshire. He was from Ohio, and he decided they were going to take the scenic route home and visit some of his customers on the way back.
Oh, so that's awesome.
We got to talk to him a little bit, and that was nice.
Very cool.
And he's excited about getting us to try some more stuff here, which we want to.
I love that we're constantly there's new technology coming out. We're constantly evaluating it and looking at it to see if we can incorporate it and do things better as far as from a ecosystem standpoint. And I love that.
Now, you said we had a second call.
We do.
But if it's you know who, I don't know if I want to listen to
we're playing it. Yeah, we're playing it.
There was a shopping mall. Now it's all covered with flowers. You got it. What? No, not now. No, I'm waiting. I'm on hold with the Pine Men. This is their hold music. Please, no, not now. I'm waiting on hold, and then we have a 7-second delay, which we must respect. No, okay. I'll be with you shortly. Thank you. Hello, fellas. Hi. The Native Knowledge Men. Hello, my pine friends. Yes. On a topic, Pam Balam, the Answer Man, that was in fact a drummer in the Cramps, and her brother, as you well know, Pam, was the very cool Brian Gregory. But that's another topic for perhaps another radio program that you might want to start. Thomas, I'm sorry to indulge myself. Now, Pam, Thomas, Mr. English Muffin, a moment of Thanksgiving, if I may. As you probably read in the papers, I believe the Post had a front page article on it. I was working the big drill press on the property on my estate, and I was hit in the head with a flying buttress, and it hurt. But I'm convalescing now in a hammock for some time, as Pam has discussed earlier, and I'm okay and should make a recovery. Now, I want to thank you, your producer there. I forget her name. Is it Mabel? They're on the radio, or Martha. She sent me a very nice basket, and I was just a little bit unsure of how a cheese and a summer sausage don't need any refrigeration. but maybe that's another show all by itself. I don't know. Anyway, man, Pam had mentioned the Cherry, the Wishniak, and I wanted to remind you, and Pam, you know this, the band The Scandal with the Patti Smythe. They did a commercial for Frank Soda, and at the end she says, "Is it Frank? Thanks." And I remember her. She was a very nice person. Now, this was before she became the Warrior. Remember when she was a Warrior? Right. Well, this is before that. And Pam, tell Thomas, this is Patti Smythe, not Patti Smith, who was also very good, but she had the armpits and, whatever. Now, fellas, I had a laugh during the Buzz Cut program, as you call it, because now Pam already knows this, but Mr. English, back in my beatnik days, many years back, I published quite a few books under the name of Harry Beertongue, and I don't know if my publisher, as Pam knows, was called the Penstemon Press down in the Village. Now, Thomas, my most famous book as Harry Beertongue was, and this is the one I autographed to you, Pam, at the Antiquarian Book Fair, was Better Make That Dinner to Go, A Personal History of Eating Lonely Meals in New York.
That was all over the place. There was no.
Did he ask a question?
No,
no,
it wasn't even on topic. So I'm thinking, I did write myself a note. We should maybe we have no hold music. When you call our question and comment line, it goes right to a voicemail, and you leave a message. So
he's just always got music in his head.
Yeah, we need to come up with or make a Saul playlist. So the song he was singing was "Nothing But Flowers" by the Talking Heads, and I think the last one was "Sowing the Seeds of Love" by Tears for Fears. Do you know who the Talking Heads are?
Yes.
All right. So wow, he was all over. So Brian Gregory, he mentioned Pam Blam was the brother of Brian Gregory. Brian Gregory was the original guitarist, guitarist in the Cramps. Their brother and sister, and he unfortunately passed away at an early age. And he also mentioned, it's all music, Patti Smythe and Patti Smith. Do you know who either of them are?
Neither. No.
So Patti Smythe was in the band Scandal. Their big hit was The Warrior in the 80s. Yep. So do you know that song?
I know that song. Yeah.
All right. So, and they did a commercial for Frank's, which was a local Philly. So it was like the bargain soda, but it was good soda. But and their slogan was, "Is it Frank's? Thanks." That's
good. It rhymes.
Yeah. So Patti Smith was a poet, original CBGB New York City artist. Like a lot of her music was spoken word or music. She didn't shave her armpits.
Okay.
So that was that. But he's talking to a producer now. Like,
which
I thought I produced.
I don't think we have a producer.
So he's if he's talking about me, he's confusing me for a woman now. So now I'm Fran or Mabel. I guess it is. So I think we'll keep the whole food preservatives for a whole nother topic.
Yeah,
we do food, but I'm thinking these books. He's saying I have an autographed copy. If these books exist, I need to.
Yeah, we got to find him someplace.
Yeah,
it's
Harry Penstemon Press. I think that flying buttress hit him. That's
hit him a little too hard. Yeah,
I thought those things only happened in like cathedrals in like Europe. And now he's got flying buttresses on his property. All right. I just think we need to.
Yeah, I don't know.
I got nothing. I don't know
what else to say.
I got nothing. It was. All right, maybe we should just go into the topic.
I think we should.
All right.
And this is like our greater expanded version of That's Hot. So
yeah.
We have a list here of things that we've seen blooming around the nursery. Some are just starting to taper out. Some of them are just starting to pick up. So we just want to list some stuff off. And it's like Darren in Washington, this probably isn't going to help you very much. But if you're in the Mid-Atlantic, this is kind of what's going on right now and something that you might want to go outside and take a look for.
Yeah. It's, a lot of the times when you're searching for native plants and you're going to a garden center, you're buying things out of bloom because you're it's a different experience. You're going there with a thought in mind of what you want. And a lot of times garden centers will focus on what's in bloom. So these are some things that are kind of in bloom now or in their, have some sort of visual stimulation right now that you can walk in and see. So, I think it's fair to, we've mentioned Penstemon so many times now, but I just happened to be walking by an order the other day and they were in full bloom and the pollinators were all over them. Right now, Penstemon is a great choice of what's looking
Yeah.
good.
Yep. Yeah. It's just starting to set seed. And then this is Penstemon digitalis. Penstemon hirsutus is actually like a week or two earlier, and still in bloom in our area, but is if you go along, you have maybe 3/4 of the flowers already starting to set seed, where you still have a handful that are left on the stalk. You also had Iris versicolor.
Yeah, I did, and I posted in the Facebook group. I went for a walk at one of the local Burlington County parks last weekend, and I had my camera with me, and I was taking photos. I was surprised to see Iris still in bloom.
Yeah, it's typically wrapped up by now.
Yeah, so it was just very interesting to me. So that should be over, but right now there's, in the wild, Iris is still blooming. I've noticed, it's funny. It's one of those shrubs that I don't realize until it's in bloom, but I've been noticing sambucus all over, elderberry all over now.
Yep.
Like it's along the ditches on the road leading up to the nursery. You're kind of seeing it all over the place.
Yeah, which I made elderberry is becoming popular for the berries because they're high in antioxidants, and if you make it like a juice or jams and those kind of things out of them. But and then a couple years ago with the royal wedding, it was popular because they had like elderberry syrup in their drinks or something like that.
I was just at a tavern 2 weeks
elderberry
ago.
liqueur. That's
they
what
had
it was.
elderflower liqueur. Yeah. And I didn't have it because it was a very
elderflower liqueur, not elderberry liqueur, which is just the flower of your elderberry.
Yeah, it was a very cold and rainy day, and it was a very warm and summery drink.
Yep.
Like it wasn't what you wanted to have that day.
And then I actually just reposted this on our Pinelands Nursery Facebook page the other day, but I did a recipe video for elderberry or elderflower fritters.
And you made them for us. They were wonderful.
And I was thinking maybe I gotta make them again because they were really good.
Yeah.
I haven't made them in a couple years.
Totally.
So.
Viburnum, dentatum is flowering right now. Now
Lobum's wrapped up.
Yeah. But I've noticed that dentatum is like pretty much it was in its glory last weekend. So that's when you can start seeing on properties if they have cultivars, because most of them will bloom at different times. So the native one for us here in the Northeast, at least in New Jersey, is blooming right now.
Yeah. Then what I almost chose for my That's Hot, but then I wanted to take throw a little curveball. But I almost chose Magnolia Virginiana, which is a really cool plant that's blooming right now. Another shrub.
Great summer flower, and it's we've chosen it. I think I chose it in the late fall, early winter because it was still holding its leaves. So it's a great, for magnolias, and you don't have to worry about frost nipping the flowers off because it blooms later. It's a great plant. The native roses, pasture rose, I noticed in the nursery. I was walking through a house and pasture rose was blooming. So
a lot of the native roses are blooming right now.
So that's a great one. Has a lot of benefits. I know Darren was posting his were blooming out in Washington. So
and I threw this one in there. It's not something we grow, but I've seen just so many questions about it online. Is those little like aster-like flowers that are white and have the yellow centers that you see all over. Is called Daisy Fleabane.
Okay.
And also a native plant, and I think it's an annual, but they're just popping up all over. And I know there's a lot of people who are getting annoyed in some of these native plant groups because there's just so many people posting pictures saying, "Hey, what's this? Is it native?" And sometimes it gets a little overwhelming sometimes. But that's if you're in the Northeast Mid-Atlantic and you see that like little white daisy-ish aster-like flower. That's what
I've noticed it a lot lately. It's popping up. As Tom mentioned, Winterberry Holly is in blooming right now. So we already waxed poetically about the benefits of that one.
Yeah, and then I was walking in our seed fields, and then I noticed by our mailbox too, we have some common milkweed, and that is literally set flower heads, and some of them are just starting to bloom, which is now's the time. So
it's funny where the park where the iris were that were blooming later, their milkweed hadn't even set flower buds yet. It's
literally you'll go by one day and then you go by 3 days later, it seems like they're almost starting to bloom. So
And what's the last one you got on
the last one was isn't a flower, but Calamagrostis canadensis, which is blue joint grass, has a really attractive like feathery seed head, and that's looking really nice right now. I actually cut a couple stems because it makes some really cool filler for like bouquets, and if you want like a little wildflower bouquet, that's a good thing to put in there because it provides a different texture.
And that's
And,
a cool plant because that one for a grass can take some shade, you know, and can take some wetter conditions. So it's a little more versatile, which is good to see. I think that's it. That's a pretty good, and we're at about an hour right now.
Yeah,
we're
so
doing pretty good.
I told you we'd be a little bit shorter today. Not quite an hour, but a little bit,
so
a little bit less than usual.
I have no complaints.
Awesome, because I don't think I could handle it.
No, I am complaint free. But if you'd like, we could do a pod deck.
Let's do one.
I kept them with me. I actually have them for a change. Let's see what we got here. Can't do that one.
Yeah, this is again great podcasting. Fans sifting through the cards, picking out the one he wants to do.
Yeah, answer your business frequently asked questions. We do that all the time.
Yeah, we do that all the time.
So this one is why I quit blank. So you fill in the blank.
Oh gosh. Huh.
So that could be interesting. Like why I quit blank. And it could be using pesticides, using herbicides, planting cultivars.
I really got to think about this one.
Yeah. Why I quit blank. I got to give it a second too. Let me see.
The first one I was thinking of was I quit planting cultivars, but I never really planted cultivars. There's a handful, but for the most part, I'd steer clear, primarily because I had access to straight species plant. And I actually don't have access to cultivars easily. So that was the main reason there.
You know, I will say this, you know, and this was before I started working here. So, you know, I was a victim of that trap of, hey, my lawn needs to look a certain way. Not that I felt that it needed to. My neighbors definitely felt I was when I moved to New Jersey, the neighbors on both sides of me didn't have one weed in their lawn, and they hated the fact that I had dandelions. They hated the fact that I had weeds, and they were not happy about it. So to be a good neighbor at the time, I was trying to, you know, I would fertilize my lawn. I would do that. This is going back over 20 years ago. And where we live in the country, and Tom, you know, there's no city sewer and there's no city water. So I have well and septic. So the water, when I moved in, I didn't think about it because I'd never lived in a situation that way. And the water would run off my property to the street, run down the street, and go into a sewer grate. And I started thinking one day, I was down there, like we were friends with the neighbors where the sewer grate was. I was like, we don't have sewer. So where's this grate going? Well, the grate went to a drainage ditch that kind of went alongside of their property and then just spilled onto their backyard, like into a natural area. So all these chemicals and fertilizers and runoff from everything was just going to the street, picking up the oil and all that, and then just getting dumped. Now, granted, that's what rain gardens do by capturing some of this. But I just realized all these things I was putting in my yard were washing out and then just being dispersed in someone's backyard, basically. And it really made me think twice about it, and doing the things that we talked about, like mowing higher. I haven't done anything in 20 years. I haven't put seed down. I'm mowing the high setting, all that stuff. You know, that's why I quit. I realized I saw with my eyes where this stuff was going, and it made me change how I handled it. And that was before I even worked here.
Yeah. Fran, you probably noticed I started smiling.
Yeah, I was like, all right, Tom's got something good.
Racking my brain saying, oh, what am I gonna say? What am I gonna say? And I'm like, because a lot of things I wouldn't say I quit doing them. I just never really started doing them. Like I never started putting a lot of fertilizer down. I guess I kind of quit mowing my lawn super short. I mow it a lot higher now, but I've talked about that on the podcast before. But I thought of one that's going to be very controversial.
All right,
let's hear it. There's going to be a lot of people who don't like this take, but I quit liking house cats, or I shouldn't say house cats, but common cats.
Wow.
And yeah, so there's a lot of people who are like, how could you not like cats? And other than the dog people who already are like, oh, cats, whatever. But
I don't mind cats, but I would never own a cat.
To dogs too, and any really outside pets. As you can probably infer, a lot of them aren't technically native species to North America, and they wreak a lot of environmental havoc. Specifically, cats do. But dogs do. Well, they'll chase, like dogs are known to chase wildlife. They're chasing deer, and a lot of times they're killing things, even forming like packs sometimes to kill things. But cats will usually hunt on their own, and they'll just like kill birds and rodents and all kinds of stuff just for the sake of killing them. And you'll probably notice if you have an outdoor cat, a lot of times they bring things back to your doorstep.
Yeah.
They don't need it. They just bring it back. And then they're the like number one killer of songbirds in the country is cats.
Wow.
So yeah, they think about with your cats. Just, I'm not telling you don't get rid of your cats. Think about with your cats, and maybe you want to keep them inside a little bit more. But the outdoor cats tend to do a lot of cats on another thing. A lot of times outdoor cats, even though they'll be your cat, they'll visit like a lot of the houses around you, and they travel. They go places, they'll come back. And on their travels, they're killing specifically a lot of birds, and a lot of beneficial birds at that. So if you do have cats, my word of wisdom would be try and keep them inside as often as you can. If you catios are a big thing now. You build into like a little screened in area for your cats to go play outside, so you can still go outside, but they aren't. And this isn't speculation. This isn't just my feelings. This is like proven stuff. They've said cats kill so many things. So yeah, that's one thing. I used to like cats when I was a kid, and we had outdoor cats growing up, and but and even now there's some feral cats that have shown up in my parents' backyard, and I joke and say, hey, like you shouldn't be encouraging these things. I shouldn't say, I'm serious when I say you shouldn't be encouraging these cats to stay around and feeding them and all that. You need to like they need to be elsewhere. If you want them, adopt them and keep them inside, but don't just like put food out outside so they keep coming back, because they're not killing to eat. They're a lot of times they're just killing to kill. So yeah,
I'm not touching that one. I'm leaving that one. You know, like I said, I'm not a cat person. I don't dislike cats. I would never own a cat. I just never would. That's just not. Growing up, we had cats that were all outside cats. They weren't really. They would come in, you know, but they spent most of their days outside. And I know the killing.
And that's just what you see. So yeah, I'm ready for. I know there's going to be a lot of people who don't necessarily agree with me, but it's not just my opinion. It's like I said, it's the science has shown that they are very, very destructive. And I think what I'm saying is I'm saying in a reasonable way. I'm ready for like the onslaught now. But I won't backpedal off of that.
No, you're not telling people what to do or what to think. You're just saying your personal feeling on it is.
So I quit cats.
All right, there you go. I think that's it, Tom. We did pretty good. We're at about an hour and 6 minutes.
Yeah, so that wraps it up. Thank you for joining us today. You hope you enjoyed listening to all my anti-cat opinions. But yeah, we really enjoy having you listen to the buzz and really for just listening to Native Plants, Healthy Planet as a whole.
Yeah, awesome. So as always, we're going to give RJ Comer a big thank you for contributing the theme music to our Buzz episodes. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you consume your music. Follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery or Native Plants _Healthy Planet. And you can also check us out at YouTube. Thank you for all the new subscribers to YouTube. That's almost doubled in the last 3 months. So, and we have a lot of good video content on there. Bring your questions and comments to our question and comment line. Call us at 215-346-6189. I will repeat that, 215-346-6189. Ask a question or leave a comment, and we will play it on a future episode of The Buzz and discuss it or answer it. And keep it going with the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. It's been fantastic, and we're not even the main contributors anymore. There's a lot of other people who are bringing things in that we're talking about, and the community's been great. So, and keep that going. We'd love to see that. So you can listen to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast directly at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. You can also check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or really wherever you consume your podcast. Make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share this with a friend. It really, really helps.
we have t-shirts that are going to launch. By the time you're hearing this, they'll be up. They aren't up at the moment at the time of recording, but they'll be up by this afternoon. And we're really excited for you guys to see those. And we're going to order some for ourselves. So
I'm excited.
So you can watch us on YouTube and see our fancy shirts.
I'm super excited.
And I think I mentioned it the last time we talked about them, but we're not doing this to make any money for ourselves. That would be greedy in my mind. So we're taking that, and that's not the reason for our platform is to make money off of it. It's to spread the message of why native plants are great. So we're taking all the money that we're making off these shirts, and we're going to donate them back to a lot of our guests because they're working for these nonprofits, and that money is going to help them way more than it's going to help Fran or I. So that was part of the goal, and we're happy to be able to give back. And I'm going to be really embarrassed if we only make like $50 that we got to split between all these organizations.
You know, I think I think you did a fantastic job with the designs, and even all the goodwill behind it and where the money's going. People are going to see these shirts and want to wear one. So I know I need to have one. There's one I have to have.
Oh yeah. So one of the things we talked about in the last buzz, and I think it'll be a buzz thing, is we're gonna have one of us is gonna share a secret story. And I didn't tell Fran, but I have one prepared that I'm gonna do.
Okay, awesome.
And a lot of, if you watch the YouTubes, you'll probably notice this, but I like to sit with my hand kind of on my chin, forming an L with my thumb, and then my pointer's kind of facing up. And when I look at myself on the Zoom, I can see my wedding ring a lot. Well, I got some poison ivy on my finger or something. And I haven't been wearing it the last 2 days, and I notice it a lot. But right after, and this is native plant related, right after my wife and I got married, she always said, "You're going to lose that ring. I know you're going to lose it." And it was a month after I went to the Millersville Native Plant Conference, and I was staying at a hotel in Lancaster, just outside of the campus, and got ready the next morning to go back to the conference, took my ring off so I could put some gel in my hair or something, and just being me, forgot to put it back on. I did it all the time at home. I forget to put it back on. I go back up to the bathroom, put it back on. But I was at a hotel, so I left, checked out, drive to the conference. I'm talking to Greg Kazerski from Earned Seed, who's a friend of mine, and just happened to touch my hand. I'm like, oh, I forgot the ring. I just checked in the car, checked the back. I'm like, I know I left it there because that was my thing. If I wasn't wearing a hat, I'd put some product in my hair, so I take it off, and went back. And they said they had no clue where the ring was. They didn't find it anywhere in the room. I'm like, I know it was on the counter. I know exactly where I put it. So let me go up to the room, and they couldn't find the ring. It was completely gone until I offered $100 reward. And then it all of a sudden it turned up.
Wow.
And it was there. Oh, wow. It was one of the maids put it in their purse or something. Then once I offered the reward, said, well, that's better than what I was going to get for the ring. And I gave them $100 thinking, okay, I'm going to call up corporate and say, hey, this is what happened, and they would be like really embarrassed and refund me the $100. That didn't happen. They were like, oh no, they found the ring, so you're fine. And I was like, no, that's not, I didn't actually lose the ring. They took the ring.
And then held it held it hostage.
And this was the negotiation. So I'm still hold a grudge, and I will never stay at that brand of hotel anymore.
Wow. So now I feel the pressure on. I'm like, do I have a story? Like, do I have a secret that I could share on a future episode? Now I kind of feel like
I'm sure, Fred, you have plenty of stories you can share. But with that, thank you again, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone, for spending time with us. We'll see you next time. We do have a rooted discussion, and I know we do because we already recorded it.
Yep.
So
and it's on pollinators with 3 of our past guests, so we're really excited for you guys to hear that one.
It is a pollinator dream team, so we're excited to share that one with you. We can't wait to get it out there. But thank you again, everyone. Until then, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.